Some people are born into families that lift each other up, others into ones that clip your wings the moment you show signs of flying. My name's Blake. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 12 years, I've run a small but successful auto repair garage just outside of town. It's not glamorous. I smell like engine oil more days than not, and half my wardrobe consists of branded work shirts with grease stains that never quite wash out. But I built that garage from the ground up, signed my first lease with shaking hands and a used wrench set, and now I employ 4 other mechanics, all of whom rely on me to keep their own families fed. So no, it's not glamorous, but it's mine. Growing up, though, you'd think I was the family embarrassment. I'm the youngest of 3 boys. My oldest brother, Greg, is 39, the golden child, the startup whiz, the one who left our small town for bigger things in the city, and who made sure everyone knew just how much bigger those things were. My parents? They bought into the hype like it was gospel. Greg could do no wrong. When he got his MBA, there was a catered party at the house with engraved napkins and a drinks on Greg signature cocktail. When I passed my ASE certification, my dad gave me a pat on the shoulder and said, "Well, at least you've got a trade." The middle brother, Josh, is 36. He's quieter, works in logistics, married, 2 kids, lives about 45 minutes away. We're not especially close, but he's not cruel, just passive. The kind of guy who fades into the wallpaper during family events and laughs nervously when Greg makes one of his usual snide remarks. Greg's been like that forever, by the way. That smug, upper-hand tone. He once brought his girlfriend, now wife, Celeste, to Thanksgiving and introduced her to my then-girlfriend Sarah by saying, "This is Blake's girl. He fixes cars for a living. If you ever need an oil change or a discount on tires, he's your guy." I could practically see Sarah's face drop. He made it sound like I was a punchline. I pulled him aside afterward and told him to cut it out, but he just laughed, said I was too sensitive, and that I should be proud of being a blue-collar hero. It only got worse after I married Sarah. We had a small wedding. Nothing fancy, just a backyard ceremony with close friends, folding chairs, barbecue, and a rented tent. It was meaningful to us. Honest. Every detail was chosen with care, and we didn't go into debt for it, which felt like a win. Greg? He showed up late, wearing sunglasses, and loudly asked someone, "Is this the rehearsal or the actual wedding?" Then laughed. At the reception, he made a toast, uninvited, and joked that Sarah must really love me if she was willing to marry a guy whose idea of fine dining was a gas station burrito. That one stuck with me, not just because it was cruel, but because he said it in front of everyone, my coworkers, her parents, my friends. I remember standing there, arm around my new bride, forcing a laugh so I wouldn't make a scene on our big day. But inside, I was boiling. Not because I was ashamed of my job. I'm proud of what I do, but because he never saw the person I'd become. Just the version of me that didn't fit into his neatly curated image of success. After that, I started pulling away. I didn't go to every birthday dinner. Skipped a few holiday gatherings. My parents noticed, but they chalked it up to my busy schedule. They never asked why I seemed distant. Maybe they didn't want to know. Or maybe they knew and just didn't care to fix it. Things simmered quietly for a few years. I kept my head down, expanded the garage, hired more help. Sarah and I bought a modest house, adopted a rescue dog named Wrench. I know, and we were content. Not flashy, not rich, but content. Then came Greg's startup, Mavra, some kind of tech platform for remote team-building exercises. Don't ask me how that works. I'm not his target audience, and I stopped pretending to understand his innovations a long time ago. He raised capital from a few angel investors, got some media buzz, even did a podcast. My parents were over the moon. Every call with my mom included some variation of, "Your brother was just featured in that entrepreneurship magazine," or "He's going to be presenting at a conference in New York." Meanwhile, I was getting brake fluid on my jeans and making sure an elderly woman's AC worked in her 2009 Corolla during a heat wave. Again, no shame in it. But the contrast? It was always thrown in my face. Then, 2 months ago, Mavra crashed. Hard. Apparently, the market shifted, funding dried up, one of the big backers pulled out, and Greg, Mr. Visionary, had put more of his own money into it than he let on. A lot more. Suddenly, he was facing bankruptcy. Celeste left him temporarily to stay with her sister for space. And Greg, well, he spiraled. And that's when the phone call started. Not from Greg. From my parents. It started subtly. My dad called one afternoon while I was at work and asked if business was still good. I said yeah, we were steady, booked a week in advance, even looking at expanding the back half of the shop into a second bay. He made a weird humming sound and said, "Glad to hear. It's important to have assets during tough times." Didn't think much of it. Until my mom called 2 days later and mentioned, almost in passing, that Greg was going through a rough patch and could really use a strong support system. She asked if I'd thought about investing in anything lately. I said no. I was saving for a new lift for the garage. She sighed like I'd just said I was buying scratch-offs with my life savings. Then Josh texted me. Just a simple, "You should call Greg. He's not doing great." I asked if he was okay. Josh said, "Not really. Mom and Dad are worried." But again, no direct ask. Just vibes. Guilt. Then Greg himself finally called. The voicemail was classic him. "Blake, it's me. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I could really use your help. Call me back." I didn't. Instead, I had dinner with Sarah that night and told her everything. She didn't say much at first, just listened, nodding slowly as she ate. Then she put her fork down and said, "You know what's coming, right?" I did. I just didn't want to admit it. The next Sunday, we went to my parents for dinner. Big mistake. The moment we walked in, my mom kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, then said, "I'm so glad you're here. We've all been talking, and there's something important we need to discuss." The table was already set. Greg was there, pale, thinner, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. He tried to smile when he saw me, but it didn't reach his eyes. Josh and his wife were already seated, looking anywhere but at me. I hadn't even taken my jacket off before my dad clapped his hands and said, "All right, let's get to it." And what he said next, that was the moment everything changed. I should have turned around and walked out right then, but I didn't. I stood there, coat half on, half off, watching my family's carefully rehearsed performance unfold like they were about to stage a heartwarming intervention. Except it wasn't about helping someone through rehab or saving a marriage. No, this was about me giving up everything I'd built to rescue the golden boy from the consequences of his own ambition. "We've been thinking," my dad began, looking me dead in the eye, "that this is a real opportunity for the family to come together. Greg has always been the dreamer, the visionary." "He's broke," Josh muttered, then winced, like he hadn't meant to say it out loud. My dad shot him a glare. "He's not broke. He's just in a temporary situation. A setback. Great men face setbacks." Sarah reached over and gently touched my wrist under the table. A silent signal. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Mom smiled tightly and added, "Your brother has a plan. A good one. He just needs a little time and a little help." We all agreed that it makes the most sense for the family to invest in him again. "And since you've got the garage," there it was. The line. The one they'd been building up to all week. I felt it drop like a cinder block in my stomach. "What about the garage?" I asked, though I already knew. Greg leaned forward then, like he couldn't help himself anymore. "You've got equity. Real property. Equipment. You could sell off some of it, maybe refinance the land, float a bridge loan for 6 to 12 months. I could get Mavra back on its feet. The investors would come back if they saw a bit of cash flow. This isn't charity, Blake. It's strategic." He actually used that word. Strategic. I blinked. "You want me to sell part of my garage to fund the same startup that already tanked?" He didn't flinch. "You've always been the guy who works with his hands. I'm the one who works with ideas. You've got the physical capital, I've got the intellectual capital. Together." "Stop." I didn't mean to cut him off like that, but it just came out. "You're asking me to bail you out." "We're asking you to help your family," my mom corrected, like this was some kind of group hug moment. "Greg's your brother. And I'm your son." I shot back, more sharply than I intended. "Do you even hear yourselves right now?" Dad crossed his arms. "Don't get defensive, Blake. We're just trying to have a civil conversation." I stood there for a moment, just absorbing it all. The smell of roast chicken in the air. The fake cheer in my mom's voice. Greg sitting there, dressed in some designer casual thing with a watch that probably cost more than my welding rig. And somehow, I was the one expected to sacrifice everything. Josh finally spoke up again. "It's not right to put all of this on Blake. He's got a business to run. A family." Mom turned to him, exasperated. "You said you couldn't help because of the kids' school tuition, Josh. We understand. But Blake has always had more flexibility." "Flexibility?" I repeated, almost laughing. You think owning and running a business is flexible? I work 6 days a week. I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. I'm on call for emergencies. My name is on every piece of paperwork. But because I don't wear a suit or pitch to VCs, you assume I have money just lying around. Greg shook his head. This isn't about pride, Blake. It's about doing the right thing. You've got steady income. You're not at risk the way I am. Exactly, I snapped. You're the risk, not me. And you want me to gamble my entire livelihood because you took a chance and lost. He frowned. I didn't lose. The market shifted. No, I said coldly. You lost. You bet big. You burned through investor money. And now you're here asking me to burn down the only thing I've built because you still think you're the smartest guy in the room. The room went silent. I could hear the fork Josh's wife dropped clink against her plate. My dad stood up. Enough. But I wasn't done. No, not enough, I said. You want to talk about family? Let's talk about family. Where was Greg when I was fixing up the garage with secondhand tools and no AC in the middle of July? Where was he when I pulled a 72-hour shift during that storm because half the town's trucks broke down and people needed help? Where was any of you? Sarah finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. Your family didn't even offer to help us with the wedding. But now you expect Blake to sell his business for Greg's company. My mom winced. We thought you wanted a small wedding. No, Sarah said, eyes steady. We wanted a wedding we could afford. There's a difference. And when Greg made that toast. Oh, come on, Greg groaned. That was a joke. You're really still mad about that? Yes, I said, standing up. Because you humiliated me in front of my wife's family. And you've never once apologized. Greg looked at our parents for backup. This is exactly the kind of chip-on-the-shoulder thinking that keeps him from growing. He's always been small-minded. And that was the breaking point. I saw red. Not in the violent sense, but in that painful, boiling, clarity kind of way. My whole life, Greg had treated me like I was second tier. And my parents had let him. No, they'd encouraged it. They made excuses, smoothed it over, acted like it was my fault for not being more ambitious. I'm done, I said quietly. Mom blinked. What do you mean? I mean, I'm done pretending this is a family. You don't respect me. You don't respect what I do. And now, you expect me to sacrifice everything so Greg can try to play Silicon Valley again. Dad looked furious. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm being honest. And maybe for the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself. Greg stood up too. You're going to regret this, Blake. I'm telling you, this could have been a great opportunity for all of us. I don't need your opportunities, I said. I've already got something you'll never have. He narrowed his eyes. What? Stability, I said. And dignity. With that, I turned to Sarah. We're leaving. She stood without hesitation. We walked out together, coats barely on, leaving the smell of dinner and the echo of stunned silence behind us. As we got in the truck, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from release. Sarah looked over at me and whispered, You okay? I nodded. Yeah, for the first time in a long time. I think I am. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because the next morning, I woke up to 27 missed calls for voicemails and a text from Josh that simply said, You need to see this. And when I did, that was the moment it stopped being personal. That was the moment it became war. I'll never forget what it felt like that morning. Waking up in a daze, sunlight creeping through the curtains, the smell of fresh coffee wafting from the kitchen, and Sarah humming to herself like everything was normal. But my phone told a different story. 27 missed calls. For voicemails. And one text from Josh. You need to see this. My heart was already racing as I unlocked my phone. The first voicemail was from my mom, her voice cracking with forced calm. Blake, honey, I really think you're overreacting. We should talk. It's not fair to shut the whole family out over one dinner. Greg was just passionate. Call me, okay? The second was from Greg, and it made my skin crawl. Wow. Real mature move, Blake. Walk out like a drama queen and ignore the one time we actually needed you. But hey, maybe if your ego's more important than your family, you're not the man I thought you were. Third voicemail. Dad, Blake, we raised you better than this. I don't know what Sarah's feeding you, but you're throwing away decades of family loyalty over nothing. You better come around before it's too late. And the last one, that one was quiet. Just Greg again, muttering. You'll regret this. I swear you will. I was about to throw the phone across the room when Sarah stepped into the bedroom with 2 mugs in her hands. She caught the look on my face immediately. What happened? I showed her Josh's text. We opened it together. It was a screenshot. A Facebook post. From my mother. The caption read, "Some people only show up when they need something, but disappear when we need them. Family is supposed to be forever. Greg is going through the worst moment of his life, and his own brother chose pride over love. Disappointed doesn't even begin to cover it." Underneath, dozens of comments. Family friends. Distant cousins. Church ladies who once brought us baked ziti after my granddad died. All of them weighing in, some tagging me. Praying for Greg. So sorry your other son turned his back on you. Blake was always a little distant, wasn't he? God sees who's loyal. I just sat there. Stunned. Heart pounding. Cheeks burning. Sarah scrolled through the comments, jaw tightening with each swipe. "They made it public," she whispered. "They made you the villain." And they had. Suddenly, I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the selfish traitor who abandoned his family when they needed him most. My reputation? Trashed overnight. I got dirty looks at the grocery store. One of my longtime clients, a guy named Ron who brought his work van in every other month, called and canceled an appointment. Said he was rethinking who he did business with. It was like a slow bleed. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just cuts. Little ones, one after another. Until I started to feel it. The isolation. The doubt. The quiet, creeping voice that asked, what if they're right? I still showed up at the garage every day. Still opened at 7 a.m. Still worked through the oil changes and brake jobs and busted radiators. But it was different now. I was distracted. My hands shook sometimes. I snapped at my texts more than I should have. A few customers ghosted me without a word. Then came the worst hit. My lease renewal. I'd rented the garage space from the same guy, Hank, for over a decade. Never missed a payment. We had a good relationship. Handshakes, not contracts. But when I reached out that month to renew, his tone had changed. "I've had other offers," he said on the phone. Bigger ones. From a dealership group looking to expand. I felt my stomach drop. "I've been here 12 years, Hank." "I know, son. But times are changing. They're offering triple." I didn't blame him. Not really. It was business. But I hung up that day with the sickening realization that I might lose everything. The walls started closing in. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. Sarah caught me just staring at the wall one night, my hands clenched in my lap like I was waiting for something to explode. "You can't let them win," she whispered. I looked at her, and something broke inside me. "They already have." But she shook her head. "No, not yet. You're still breathing. You're still you." I don't know what it was about the way she said it, like she was reminding me of something I'd forgotten. But that night, I opened my laptop and pulled up an old folder I hadn't touched in years. Business plans. Sketches. Photos of the shop from when I first started. Notes I'd scribbled in the margins of receipts, dreaming about expanding. And buried deep inside, a list. If I ever own my building. Install second lift. Expand waiting area. Offer loyalty program. Add coffee station, Sarah's idea. Paint the garage doors red. It hit me like a punch to the chest. I'd been playing it safe for too long. And now I had nothing left to lose. That night marked the start of something new. Not a dramatic comeback montage. Not a Rocky-style training sequence. Just quiet determination. I met with a real estate agent the next day. Told her I wanted to buy my own property. Something I could own, outright. Something no one could take from me. She blinked. "Industrial property's expensive right now." "I know," I said. "But I'm not looking for pretty. I'm looking for possible." It took weeks. I drove to the outskirts of town, scouted old lots, made calls, ran numbers. I almost gave up twice. But then I found it. An old muffler shop near the highway, half abandoned, with cracked windows and weeds poking through the asphalt. It was perfect. Ugly, forgotten, and full of potential. I scraped together every penny I had. Took out a small business loan. Liquidated my emergency fund. Sarah backed me every step of the way, even when it meant canceling a planned vacation and cutting back on every non-essential. We bought it. Blake's Garage 2.0. I didn't tell anyone, not even my techs at first. I spent nights and weekends fixing it up. Painted the walls myself. Sanded the floors. Hired a guy from church to rewire the lighting. Installed a second lift with help from my buddy Tom, who accepted pizza and beer as payment. It was slow. It was brutal. But it was mine. I moved operations over gradually, offered discounts to loyal customers to follow me, and started rebuilding my client base from the ground up. I even set up a little coffee corner in the waiting area, Sarah's touch, and a sign over the front door that read, "Built, not borrowed." And people noticed. Not just the quality of work, but the care, the pride, the story. Turns out, authenticity goes a long way. One customer left a glowing review on Yelp about how I personally stayed late to fix her car before a road trip. Another posted a picture of the shop's new sign, calling it a hidden gem with heart. Then the local paper did a feature on small business owners bouncing back after setbacks. And somehow, they found me. I told them the truth. No drama, no dirt. Just that I came from a family where success looked a certain way, and that I had to learn to define it for myself. The article went semi-viral in town. And just like that, the tide turned. People started showing up, not just for repairs, but to support someone they saw as real. Old friends reached out. Clients returned. Even Ron, the guy who bailed, called to apologize and asked if I'd look at his brakes. And through it all, I didn't hear a peep from my family. Until one day, 6 months later, I got a letter, handwritten, from Greg. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity got the better of me. The letter was short, just a page. But the final line stuck with me. "You might think I've lost everything. But the truth is, I never had what you built. I see that now. Greg." I didn't reply, not because I hated him, but because I was finally at peace. Finally free. But remember when I said that wasn't the end? Yeah, that's because the real payback was still coming. Because just when I thought I'd rebuilt my world quietly, privately, something happened. Something big. And this time, everyone would see it. By the time fall rolled around, the trees were changing colors, and so was everything else in my life. Business at the new garage was steady, more than steady, actually. I had to hire 2 more techs just to keep up with the flow. People liked the story. Like me, I guess. The article in the local paper had legs, and someone on Twitter reposted it with the caption, "Support your local mechanic. Blake's Garage is the real deal." It exploded from there. A week later, a TikToker rolled through with a busted muffler, filmed the whole experience. Me personally walking him through the process, shaking his hand, handing his keys back with a smile. And by the next morning, I had over a dozen new appointments booked online. Our little booking software couldn't even keep up. But the biggest change? I stopped apologizing for who I was. I stopped dressing up for holidays just to look successful. I stopped saying just when I told people I was a mechanic. I stopped ducking family conversations out of guilt or obligation. Sarah called it my second engine. Like I'd rebuilt myself with new pistons, better fuel lines, and a turbo system running on peace of mind and spite. Spite, I've learned, is underrated. It was sometime in late October when I heard from Josh again. We hadn't spoken much since the dinner disaster. He'd sent a few texts here and there, updates on his kids, a thumbs-up emoji when the newspaper article went live, but he'd mostly kept out of the fray. That morning, he sent me a message that simply read, "You'll want to see this." Attached was a flyer. A digital one. Clean, modern font. Sleek branding. Mavra. The future of remote collaboration. New vision. New team. New launch. December 3rd, local investor gala and relaunch party. Hosted at the Glass House Pavilion. Keynote by Greg Turner. I blinked at the screen. Read it again. Greg was relaunching Mavra. The same company he begged me to save. The one that blew up in his face. And he was throwing a gala? I don't know what got to me more, the audacity, or the fact that he had the nerve to use the same name, same logo, same smug tone, as if none of it had ever happened. I called Josh. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, you serious about this flyer?" He sighed. "I got it from Mom. She sent it to the whole family group chat." Said Greg's bouncing back better than ever. "Group chat I'm not in, I'm guessing. You were removed." Quietly. After the dinner. I nodded to myself, jaw tightening. "Is he getting new investors?" I asked. "Looks like it. Word is he found a smaller firm, some real estate guys pivoting into tech. But they're local, trying to make a splash. That's what the gala's for." Something about it didn't sit right. The timing, the location, the image of it. Greg wasn't just relaunching a company. He was relaunching his reputation. And he was doing it in my town. The same town where he dragged my name through the mud. Where he poisoned my reputation. Where he let our parents humiliate me publicly while he posed like a fallen hero. Sarah walked into the room just as I hung up. "What's wrong?" I told her. Showed her the flyer. Watched her eyebrows rise slowly. "So he's back to playing king," she said. "Yeah." She sat across from me, sipping her tea. Are you going to the gala? I laughed. What, crash it? Walk in with a wrench over my shoulder and remind him how this all started? She tilted her head. Not a terrible idea. I grinned. But then I stopped. Because something in me shifted. Not in the petty way. Not in the I'm going to ruin his night kind of way. More like, what if this is the moment I stop playing defense? What if, instead of just moving on, I make a point? I spent that night at the shop alone. Sarah had gone to visit her sister, and I stayed late, walking the perimeter of the new space, staring at the walls, the floors, the lift I installed myself, the spray-painted Blake's Garage sign that hung from the front awning. Everything smelled like rubber and coffee and ambition. Then I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop, and I started planning. Step 1 was simple: get in the room. The gala was invite only, black tie, RSVP through Mavra's website. So I RSVP'd. Not as Blake from Blake's Garage. No, I created a dummy LLC, something quiet, clean, tech-sounding. Torque Ventures LLC. I figured it was poetic. A little wink to what I actually did. I bought a $120 suit, rented nice shoes, and cleaned up my beard. Sarah was all in the moment. I told her. You're going to look so out of place in that room, she said. I smiled. That's the point. Step 2, gather information. I started talking to people. Quietly. Reached out to clients who worked in local business. One guy, Larry, who owned a security firm, had been approached by Mavra for private event coverage. Another, Jenna, ran a catering company that Greg's team had hired for the food. Both let things slip. Greg was trying to impress a very specific investor that night. A regional venture capital guy named Pierce Rowland, known for turning mid-sized startups into acquisition bait. Greg had apparently been courting him for months. This gala? It was his big swing, which meant I knew exactly where the pressure point was. Step 3, gather allies. I called Josh again. I'm going to the Mavra event, I said. Bold. I need a favor. He hesitated. I've got my kids that weekend. It's one night. I just need you to get me something. What? A list of attendees. He exhaled. You know I'm not really a part of Greg's thing, right? But Mom is. Josh sighed. All right. I'll see what I can do. 2 days later, he texted me a PDF. List of 117 confirmed attendees. A mix of local business people, influencers, reporters, and a handful of investment scouts. Perfect. I highlighted 2 names, Pierce Rowland, and a woman named Linda Vance, a mid-tier tech journalist who ran a popular newsletter called Second Wave Startups. She was known for sniffing out red flags in recycled companies. I had a feeling she'd appreciate what I had to offer. Step 4, compile evidence. I spent the next week documenting everything. Mavra's original failure, the bankruptcy filings, the unpaid invoices I'd found online from former contractors, a series of now-deleted tweets where Greg blamed lazy devs and market sabotage for the crash. Then I pulled together screenshots of the Facebook smear campaign my mom started. The narrative? A startup founder who burned his last company to the ground, begged his working-class brother for a bailout, then publicly humiliated him when he said no. I packaged it all into a sleek, discreet PDF, titled, Rebuilt Reputation or Recycled Failure. A cautionary tale. Final step? Wait. I knew I only had one shot at this. If I came in too hot, I'd look bitter. Too soft, and they'd ignore me. I needed to pick the exact moment where Greg's ego was at full volume, when the lights were brightest, and he was in the spotlight. I had to let him feel like he'd won. So I waited. December 3rd. The Glass House Pavilion. It was a rainy night, and the venue shimmered with reflections from the city skyline. Tuxedos, champagne, fake smiles. I walked in, nodded at the bouncer, handed over my Torque Ventures LLC invite, and stepped into the lion's den. And there he was, Greg, wearing a midnight blue suit, holding court near the bar, laughing too loudly at his own joke. He didn't recognize me at first, but oh, he would. I mingled, listened, watched, waited, and then, just as Greg took the stage to deliver his keynote speech, I reached into my pocket, pulled out 2 envelopes, and handed one to Linda Vance. The other went to Pierce Rowland, and as Greg cleared his throat, smiling like he was untouchable, both of them began to read. And that was the moment the wheels started turning. The sound system crackled slightly as Greg took the stage, bathed in that soft blue uplight venues love so much, designed to make someone look expensive. He tapped the microphone once, leaned in, and delivered his opening line with all the smug confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Turner, founder and CEO of Mavra, and tonight marks not just a relaunch, but a rebirth. Polite applause followed. A few nods, some champagne sips. Investors settled in, attention fixed. I stayed near the back of the room, just out of the spotlight, nursing a ginger ale in a rocks glass to look the part. My suit was still stiff from the dry cleaner. My hands, buried deep in my pockets, were shaking, but not with nerves. It was adrenaline. Anticipation. That quiet hum you feel right before something irreversible happens. I watched Linda Vance lower her envelope halfway through Greg's second slide, her expression unreadable. But her eyes kept flicking between him and the pages she held. She was scribbling something in the margins. Pierce Rowland, sitting 2 rows from the stage, wasn't even pretending to hide it. His head was tilted down, flipping through each page slowly. His assistant, a younger guy in horn-rimmed glasses, leaned over once to whisper something. Then they both stopped watching the presentation altogether. Greg didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was in his element, pacing the stage, spouting off buzzwords, name-dropping defunct tech accelerators he once networked with at a conference in Austin. I counted at least 4 slides that had graphs with no data, just upward trending arrows and vague labels like user synergy growth and projected Q2 pivot efficiency. Then came his favorite part, the resilience narrative. He lowered his voice, got that rehearsed tremble in his tone. Last year, Mavra hit turbulence. But like all great ventures, we used failure as a foundation. I learned. I rebuilt. I sacrificed. Sacrificed? I felt my jaw tighten. He kept going. And through that storm, I leaned on the people who truly believed in me, my family, my investors, my mentors. And I want to especially thank those who stood by me when others walked away. Sarah, standing a few feet behind me, quietly slipped her hand into mine. Neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. We were here. We'd waited. And now, the trap was about to spring. Greg wrapped up the presentation to a soft round of applause, more polite than enthusiastic. He flashed that signature grin, the one I'd seen since we were kids, the one that always said I got away with it again. But this time he hadn't. Within 15 minutes, Linda Vance was gone. She didn't even stop to eat. Just disappeared out the side entrance, envelope in hand, phone already pressed to her ear. I would find out later that she went straight to her hotel room, started drafting a newsletter that would hit 40,000 inboxes the next morning. As for Pierce, he stayed. But he didn't clap. He didn't smile. When Greg finally made his way down to schmooze and pose for photos, Pierce intercepted him near the bar. I couldn't hear what was said, but I watched it all. Greg approached with his arms out, clearly expecting congratulations. Pierce didn't even shake his hand. He handed Greg the now-creased envelope, said something short, 1 sentence, maybe 2, and turned away. Greg stood frozen for a second, confused, flipping through the pages as the color drained from his face. I saw his fingers twitch slightly, like he wasn't sure whether to throw the papers down or fold them into his jacket. He chose the latter. Barely. It was poetic. The crowd didn't notice. Not yet. But the storm had started. Within an hour, 2 investors slipped out early. One of them was approached by Greg's assistant near the exit. Judging by the hand gestures and rapid blinking, it didn't go well. The buzz around the cheese table had shifted. I overheard phrases like, "Wasn't this the same company?" And "That's not what he told me last quarter." And then, just as Sarah and I were slipping out the door, Greg saw me. Our eyes locked across the lobby. I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. But he knew. I could see it in the way his expression dropped, his lips parting just slightly, the muscles in his jaw clenching like he'd bitten down on a wire. I didn't stop walking. I didn't need to say a word. I'd already spoken through the receipts. The fallout came fast. The next morning, Linda's newsletter dropped. Headline: Mavra, the phoenix that forgot it already burned. It was brutal. She detailed the history of the company, its collapse, the unpaid contractors, the public smear campaign launched against dissenters, aka me, and the fact that Greg had rebranded the exact same shell with new window dressing, hoping no one would notice. She called out the gala as a smoke and mirrors attempt to lure fresh capital from local investors unfamiliar with the company's past behavior. She even included a link to the Facebook post my mother wrote, the one blaming me for Greg's failure. Under it, she asked, If this is how leadership treats family, imagine how it treats employees. It went viral within hours. By lunch, Mavra's new Twitter account was locked. The website was under maintenance. And Pierce Rowland released a statement through his PR team saying he had declined to pursue further involvement with the company after discovering material misrepresentations in its relaunch narrative. That phrase, material misrepresentations, was like a death knell. 2 days later, Greg posted a 3-minute Instagram video. He was sitting in his car, hoodie pulled up, voice trembling. Not from tears, Greg doesn't cry, but from sheer frustration. He blamed internet trolls and bad actors for sabotaging his relaunch. Said he'd been targeted. Claimed the journalist had an agenda. It was pitiful. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Everyone else did it for me. Comment sections were flooded with stories from ex-Mavra employees, unpaid interns, and even an old college roommate of Greg's who wrote, "He used to steal protein bars from my drawer and say he was repurposing excess calories." This checks out. But the final blow came from an unlikely place, my father. He called me a week later. I let it go to voicemail. "Blake, your mom and I, we saw the article. It's a lot. We didn't know everything, and we should have asked more questions. Look, I know we messed up. Just give us a call when you're ready." He sounded tired. Smaller. I didn't call him back. I waited. Another week passed. Then Sarah and I hosted a small end-of-year barbecue at the garage for friends, employees, and loyal customers. We grilled ribs behind the lift bay, played music, let kids paint tiny car shapes on old hubcaps as keepsakes. It was wholesome, easy, real. Sometime during dessert, Josh showed up. He was holding a box. Inside, a set of old family photos. Me and Greg at ages 9 and 14, covered in mud from a backyard football game. One of Mom holding all 3 of us in front of the Christmas tree. And at the bottom, a framed photo of my wedding. The one where Greg made the awful toast. Someone had cropped him out. Josh cleared his throat. "Mom gave these to me. Said maybe you should have them now." I looked up at him. "What changed?" She read the article, he said simply. Then she read the comments. He didn't stay long. Just hugged me once and left. That night, Sarah and I stood inside the shop, surrounded by laughter, music, and the smell of charcoal and motor oil. She looked up at me and smiled. "So now what?" I thought about it for a second. Looked around at everything we'd built. The coffee corner, the fresh red doors, the sign above the lift that read, "Blake's Garage, built, not borrowed." I put my arm around her and said, "Now we keep building." Because the truth is, revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about making sure they can never destroy you again. And from where I was standing, I'd already won.